Pleasure to be here this morning. I'll be summarizing the results of a study we published last month entitled The Social Cost of Carbon, Know the Social Benefits of Carbon. Next slide, please. I'll be covering some of the topics that Dr. Michaels mentioned. Since he's already discussed that, we'll be going quickly through some of these topics. Then I want to concentrate on looking at the potential benefits of carbon dioxide, and compare those to the cost as is supposed to be done. Next slide, please. All right, the federal government must assess both the costs and benefits of proposed regulations. This is an executive order issued in 1993 by President Clinton. As indicated, the Interagency Working Group first published their social cost of carbon estimates in February of 2010, $22 a ton approximately. In May of 2013, 3 years later, they upped those by 50%. They warned us that they're going to revisit these, and I can guarantee you the cost will go up and not down. Now, just as an aside here, this is an official government estimate. Think about if the Bureau of Economic Analysis, the Commerce Department, changed by 50% or 30% the estimate of GDP within 3 years, or the Labor Department changed the unemployment estimate. It's ludicrous. The SCC, the social cost of carbon, is meant to be a comprehensive estimate of climate change damages, and as indicated, it's starting to be used in the development of proposed regulations. However, again, according to federal law, benefit cost analysis is supposed to be used, and to do that, you have to look not only at the cost of something, but also the benefits. That's how benefit cost analysis is done. It's common sense. Next slide, please. Cut to the chase here. Fossil fuels from which carbon dioxide derived, created, and are responsible for the modern world that we live in, all the good things that we currently enjoy. iPhones, iThings, iPads, vehicle transportation, refrigeration, central heating, indoor plumbing, etc. What have fossil fuels done for us recently? They facilitated the industrial revolutions, including the current one going on in the 21st century, created the modern world, advanced technology. Over the past several centuries, global life expectancy has more than doubled, population increased eightfold, real incomes increased by a factor of 11. CO2, of course, also increased. As many studies have found, ours is a high-energy civilization based largely on fossil fuels. Next slide, please. This is just a graph showing what I've just stated, the strong relationship between fossil fuel utilization and modern civilization, health, well-being, wealth, et cetera. It ain't rocket science. Fossil fuels in the industrial revolutions, 3 of them, as Robert Gordon pointed out, are creating the modern world, and as we'll see in a minute, will continue to do so. Next slide, please. All right, fossil fuels power the world. This chart says it all. Coal, oil, and natural gas currently provide anywhere between 80 and 90% of the world's energy, depending on whose estimates you want to use, and for the foreseeable future, the next 4 or 5 or 6 decades at least, will continue to. Next slide, please. Okay, energy is required for economic growth, past, present, and future. Most of the population, most of the growth, and most of the increased world energy use will come from the non-OECD nations, the poor nations, the developing nations, those nations seeking to be developed in primarily Africa, Latin America, and Asia. Next slide, please. Fossil fuels will remain supreme, again, for the foreseeable future. The EIA, the Energy Information Administration, forecasts that fossil fuels will continue to provide, the next 30 or 40 years at least, 75 to 80% of the world's energy. Next slide. Coal is the major fossil fuel resource. Coal resources, as estimated by the International Energy Agency, are 4 or 5 times the combined energy resources of oil and natural gas. As I like to say to people, coal is the energy source of the past, present, and future. Next slide. Electricity is essential for life, for modern society. This is simply a graph of the UN Quality of Life Index. Shows a very strong correlation between per capita electricity utilization and the UN's Human Development Index. The U.S. National Academy of Sciences identified electrification as the world's most significant engineering achievement of the past century. And a group of experts late last year ranked electricity as the second most significant innovation in the world over the past 6,000 years, second only to the printing press. Next slide, please. Fossil fuels are essential for electricity production. While world energy consumption is growing rapidly, electrification is growing even more rapidly. Both the U.S. and the rest of the world are becoming increasingly electrified. A larger and larger share every year of the world's energy is being comprised of electricity, and coal is currently the world's predominant fuel for electricity production and will remain so according to all forecasts out there. Next slide, please. These are the direct CO2 benefits, direct benefits of CO2, as Dr. Michaels explained. They're estimates provided by Dr. Craig Itzo as part of this project. As Dr. Michaels mentioned, over the past 3 decades or so, it's in excess of $3 trillion. These come about from the positive influence of CO2 on plant growth and agricultural productivity. Next 30 or 40 years, the estimates are in the range of 9 to 10 trillion. Those are direct CO2 benefits, but they pale in comparison. We're going to be talking about the rest of my presentation, the indirect benefits of CO2. Next slide, please. All right, this is the Federal Interagency Working Group. I won't say much here. They produce these estimates of social cost of carbon. As Dr. Michaels explained, they're deeply flawed. They imply knowledge and precision that are not there. Serious weaknesses. The methodology which employs these integrated assessment models, many assumptions that link human activity and environmental effects, even small variations produce different results, et cetera, and so forth. The bottom line, again, according to distinguished economist Robert Pindick, is that the IWG SEC estimates are, for policy purposes, essentially useless. I won't have anything much more to say about the SEC estimates, except that in our work, we accepted those as they were. There are serious problems with them. We just accepted those, both the current and their forecasts out to the year 2050. Next slide, please. Hundreds, if not thousands, of major, comprehensive, seminal, peer-reviewed studies link energy and growth over the past 2 centuries. This is simply a truism. As I said, there are hundreds and hundreds of very careful studies out there, and it's straightforward, it's obvious. You need energy to grow the modern economy, the modern society. 80 to 90% of the energy we are using is fossil fuels. Energy use and output are tightly coupled, close connection, et cetera, and so forth. Next slide, please. This is just a graph of the relationship between GDP, population, and energy use over the past 100 years or so. Quote, fossil fuels create an economic miracle that has lifted billions of people out of hopeless poverty. More recently, we've seen that going on in China and to a lesser extent India and Indonesia, for example, where over the past several decades, anywhere from 500, 600, 700 million people have been lifted out of poverty. They've been taken literally from the 14th century, living as if they were in the 14th century, to the modern 21st century, almost exclusively using fossil fuels, energy. Next slide, please. This is the graphical relationship between the link between CO2 and GDP over the past century or so. The CD2 derives from fossil fuel utilization, so we call it the indirect benefits of CO2, the fossil fuel utilization. And again, if you want a modern civilized economy, you want to grow that economy, you require energy, you require fossil fuels. Next slide, please. What we did then is take the normalized per ton value of fossil fuels as expressed in terms of GDP in constant $2007, because that's what the Interagency Working Group used, and compared for 2010 their estimate, using their estimate of cost with the benefits of fossil fuel utilization. And Dr. Michaels is right, 5 or 3 or 2% discount rates are too low, but we didn't get into that. We just used their estimates as such, and found out that even using those very suspect estimates, when you compare the benefits of CO2, the benefits of fossil fuel utilization, compare those with the cost that the IWG has estimated, the benefits outweigh the costs anywhere from orders of magnitude, anywhere from 60 to 1 to 200 to 1. Now, to put this in perspective, a traditional cost-benefit analysis, benefit-cost analysis, when you've got an investment or a project, you're trying to see if the benefit exceed the cost. You get a ratio of 2 to 1 or 3 to 1. That's great. You're good to go. I mean, when you're talking about 60 to 1 or 200 to 1, it's off the charts. In fact, I like to say the benefits of fossil fuel utilization are so large that even the estimated costs of the SEC by the Interagency Working Group are in the statistical noise, literally. Next slide, please. Those estimates were based on the 2013 estimates from the Interagency Working Group. If we use the 2010 estimates, the benefit-cost ratio would be even larger, anywhere from 100 to 1 to 500 to 1. So you get the idea here that the benefits of fossil fuel utilization are so large as to make the cost trivial, even the cost estimated by the Interagency Working Group. Next slide, please. All right, much of the policy discussion is focused on the future, what's going to happen in the future with temperature, with CO2, with energy utilization, and so forth. So we have to look at future emissions, potential cost and impact, prospective policies. So what we did here is took the best available forecasts of economic growth, GDP, fossil fuel utilization, CO2 production, et cetera, then used the estimates made by the IWG, which are out to the year 2050, and compared them. Next slide, please. All right, world GDP forecast. The Energy Information Administration expects that the reference case, the next 30 years, world GDP will increase by a factor of 3. It's going to triple. Next slide. World CO2 emissions will also increase substantially, but by about 50%. Again, being derived from fossil fuel utilization, which is almost entirely powering that GDP growth. Next slide. GDP, energy, and CO2 will remain closely linked in the future. These are some results of sensitivity analysis. We looked at the EIA reference case, high growth and low growth cases. The relationship is very strong in either case. So once again, world GDP growth is very closely tied, linked, requires CO2 emissions generated by fossil fuels. Next slide. This is a graph of that relationship approximately out to the year 2040. Again, world GDP continues to grow, as so also does fossil fuel utilization and CO2 production. And again, in the future, as this is much in the past, increased energy utilization is essential to pull people out of poverty. Not so much in the developed OECD nations, US, Europe, Japan, but especially in the third world. Again, Africa, Asia, Latin America. In fact, Bill Gates was quoted late last year. You could pick just one thing to reduce poverty by far, you would pick energy. So even the good Mr. Gates realizes the determinant factor in pulling billions of people out of poverty, taking them from the 12th century, if you wish, 21st century, is energy. Next slide. And again, in the future, anywhere from 75 to 80% of that energy will be fossil fuels, according to every comprehensive, legitimate forecast out there. All right, we use the same methodology to look at future benefit-cost ratios. Using the 2013 IWG report, forecast CO2 benefits exceed costs anywhere from 71 to 250 to 1. Again, orders of magnitude. Next slide. Using the 2010 IWG report, those estimates, the benefit-cost ratios, again, are 100 to 1 up to 500 to 1. Again, orders of magnitude. Next slide. All right, we did a number of things in this study. I want to watch. I'll just spend a minute here. what I call scale benefit cost ratios. Admittedly, not all of the energy in the world comes from fossil fuels. Currently, it's between 80–85%. In the future, it'll be somewhere in the range of 75–80%. So basically, we took that into account and reduced GDP gradually, or the GDP attributable to fossil fuels by those ratios. Next slide. And this is what we found, that again, as expected, the benefit cost ratios are still extremely large. Using the 2013 IWG estimates, benefit cost ratios are anywhere from 60 to 1 to 170 to 1. Next slide. Using the 2010 SEC estimates from the working group, the benefits are again extraordinarily large, anywhere from 90 to 1 to 400 to 1. Again, so large such that the benefits of fossil fuel utilization outweigh the cost so much as the costs are in the statistical noise. Next slide. All right, how viable are the estimates, both sides of the equation, the benefit estimates and the cost estimates? Well, Dr. Michael's already talked about the unreliability of the SEC estimates. I'll just second. Objective observers have said they're close to useless, but we've accepted those as published. How viable are the benefit estimates? I think they're believable and robust. They're backed up by over 200 years of economic history, thousands of study, and there are some direct benefits, as indicated from the IDSO slide, but the benefits are mainly indirect. They derive from fossil fuels which create CO2. Again, this is extensive literature verifies the critical role of fossil fuels in creating current technology, wealth, and our high standards of living. Next slide. Finally, in conclusion, CO2 benefits are extremely large compared to even the dubious IWC SAC estimates. The benefit estimates can be modified any way you wish. They can be scaled, adjusted, forecast, expressed as marginal values, expecting current dollars, constant dollars. The imbalance is such that they're still going to remain orders of magnitude larger than any reasonable estimate of the SEC costs, even if you accept what the Interagency Working Group has done. Federal agencies are required to assess both the costs and benefits of regulations. Okay, against it's a bill, President Bill Clinton executive order. They have to do that. To do it legitimately, you have to look at both the benefits and the cost of a proposed action or regulation or mandate. The bottom line here, which I hope you take away with you, policies designed to artificially reduce fossil fuel use will do much more harm than good and should be avoided, even if the policies are indirect, such as using these bogus SEC estimates in proposed regulation. What we're talking about here, this is an empirical fact. It's a truism, even though to some it may represent an inconvenient truth. Thank you.